Hey everyone. I just want to post this video. Firstly, just to apologize. I made a video about this preacher, Pastor Scott Lamb, about his sermon on Tuesday in the Zola Bible conference. And basically, as I was listening to the sermon, I somehow thought he had said a few things a bit on review of the sermon again. I realized that some of the things he said that I thought he said he didn't say, so by this I want to just say I apologize. Now, the things that I'm apologizing about has to do with, something he said like I owe my salvation to Pastor Mitchell, and I thought that's what he said, but it's not necessarily that they don't preach it or they don't say it, but actually I'll show you a video that kind of confirms what I'm saying. This is from Pastor Greg Mitchell, and so let's just listen to it for a moment and then we'll discuss it.
You are saved. You're not going to hell because of this church. Tempe needs your money. We need large. There are people you're watching on live stream right now, that you're watching it live or you're watching this recorded whenever you are watching it at a later time. If you are a part of the Tempe wing, you owe your soul to this church. Then care.
All right, so basically what was said is you owe your soul to this church. That's kind of what I read into the sermon of Pastor Lamb. And so I wasn't far off by, assuming that that is something that the fellowship preaches, as this is Pastor Greg Mitchell, who had preached in Tempe. I don't think it's Tempe, but basically saying exactly that, which is, biblically incorrect. We don't owe our soul to any man. Our salvation is purely through grace, through Jesus Christ. So that's just, I apologize that I put that in my video. He didn't say it, but I'm sure he said it at some point in his life, but just not in this sermon. So just clarification on that. So if anybody's offended by what I said in that video, in that or did in that video that I created, then apologies, but it is something common in the fellowship. And just on the topic of money, I want to go to a sermon that triggered me last year and kind of set me on this journey. It's this sermon by Pastor Joe Campbell about giving. It was on the Friday evening of the conference, and he was using this illustration about people giving him cars and stuff. And I just want you to listen to this for a moment, and I will talk through it at the end.
1964 truck.
He said, Pastor,
Pastor,
let me take that to Florida.
ik neem het mee naar Florida.
Show you what I can do
Ik
with it.
zal eens laten zien wat ik met zo'n ding kan doen.
Show him the truck.
Laat hem de truck zien.
Give!
Geef!
And it'll be given back to you.
En daar wordt hij jou
I think
gegeven.
there's another, look at that.
Oh!
I'm telling you, you can serve God with a truck
Je
like
kunt God
that.
dienen met zo'n mooie auto.
Ron Meyer has a friend.
Ron Meyer.
I don't know about you, but that sounds very much like prosperity preaching. Give and it will be given to you. Anybody sitting there in that sermon, which I was one of them. Anyway, I don't have words for it. It doesn't align with how I see God. But people that are new in the faith and they listen to something like this, it definitely gives the wrong impression, and it's biblically incorrect. So that's just my 2 cents on that. So that just kind of set me on a mission, and kind of ultimately led us to leaving the fellowship. One of my conversations, or the conversations that I had with someone who had left the fellowship, was just, it came down to this, that there was a lawsuit, and I just didn't understand why our fellowship did that, because 1 Corinthians 6 verse 6 clearly says that we shouldn't take Christians before the law, about church things. I mean, if somebody's broken the law, considering they've done something, illegal, then absolutely they need to be brought to justice. But this was more about, church buildings and stuff like that. And I was thinking, how much money are we actually, throwing away in these court cases? And are we justified in doing that with the money that people have been giving? People here in this conference, they gave because they expect the money is going to be used to, support missionaries and support new churches. And, if they would have stood up there and said, hey, some of this money is going to be used for a lawsuit against the brother so-and-so, I don't know if people would be giving as much as they would be. So I think that's inappropriate as leaders of the fellowship to do that. And, when I spoke to Pastor Greg Mitchell about this, he said, well, have you ever had a rebellion in your church? And I'm like, no, we're just this very small church, we don't have that kind of issue yet, and probably will come in the future. I'm sure people, its rebellion has been around as long as time exists. But he asked me, so if you have rebellion one day in your church, then come talk to me. And he said, wouldn't you, start a lawsuit if somebody, stole a church from you? I said, no. Because 1 Corinthians 6 says that's, even if somebody wrongs you, you don't take them to court. And so I just noticed that was something that was fundamentally not right, not correct. And the leaders of the fellowship had no issue with that. Which brings me to, some other things. Pastor Scott Lamb has said some outrageous things. And I just want to show you something else that he said.
Practicing, but we know that that's not always feasible or practical. But if you do bring your kids with you to any of these practices, you must teach them basic dog behavior. Sit, stay, quiet. 3 basic commands that any dog can learn. If your kids can't learn it, you're saying your kids are stupider than a dog. Amen? I think your kids would resent that if they knew that's what you thought of them. And so, if you bring your kids to practice, basic commands: sit, stay, quiet. Okay? And then if they don't listen to you, you do what you do with a dog. You roll up a newspaper and you beat them. Gets their attention. And for most kids, getting beat with a rolled up newspaper would be fun. They'd think it was a riot. Yeah, hit me again. Okay? So whatever means you use, whatever it is.
Yeah, I don't think you should do that. Don't listen to this preacher. Don't beat your kids with a newspaper, and don't treat them like they're dogs. I don't know when this was preached. It doesn't look like it's that long ago, but please don't do that. There's this other video as well. I'll just let you listen to it. It's about, someone in the church that had advised someone about the tithes, and this was his response.
Just bear with me. I was informed by someone today that one of our new converts that came to conference from one of our baby churches, so this is a grandchild convert, came to conference, and some knucklehead in this church got a hold of him and said, listen, you don't have to tithe. That's just a guilt trip. I don't know who you are, but I'd rather you leave or get converted. Your hope is salvation. Going to hell for money is a stupid idea, and you are apparently a very stupid person. Amen. Good preaching, lamb. Amen.
Yeah, hey, there are different ideas about tithing and giving, and I tithe, even though I'm not in the fellowship anymore. There are other people that have different ideas about tithing. Many times they go back to Malachi 3, like you're stealing from God if you're not tithing. And, but hey, whatever your opinion is about tithing, shaming someone from the pulpit, or, you know, preaching this from the pulpit, I don't think is a good way to address tithing. Not a very healthy thing. I just want to share this last video with you, just so you get a bit more context that this is perpetuating throughout, going now from leadership all the way down to preachers and the next generation is picking up on this, and just listen to this.
Is a demon spirit. You need to write that down. It's not just information. Well, they left the church and they're really good people. They just have a difference of opinion. Them and pastor, they just agree to disagree.
Basically, you have all of these preachers, Pastor Mitchell, Scott Lamb, and then the next generation basically taking over this idea from Pastor Wayman Mitchell. I have nothing against Pastor Wayman Mitchell. One of the things that somebody commented on one of the videos that I made, the video that I made about Scott Lamb, as well, what about you didn't focus on the mission of Pastor Wayman Mitchell, or Pastor Mitchell's vision, his vision. And I don't understand why it's specifically Pastor Wayman Mitchell's vision. I believe it is the gospel's vision. It's not necessarily one man's vision. And Pastor Wayman Mitchell got saved in the Foursquare. The Foursquare, there's a book written about it called The Vine and the Branches, written by Nathaniel Van Cleve. And by the way, is author of the Foundations of Pentecostal Theology, which most of the CFM pastors, they would have that book in the library, to read and to study and to understand Pentecostal theology. He wrote a book, The Vine and the Branches, which is like a historical account of how the Foursquare movement started. And there is a section about Pastor Wayman Mitchell in there, about 7 pages. But much of what the CFM Fellowship does is what the Foursquare did. They started off in 1910, I think, and eventually at some stage they built a building, and then there were so many people coming, so many people on fire for God, that they wanted to go out and start churches, and so they started sending out churches, and within 7 years they'd sent out I think 253 churches, and now I think they're up to possibly 24,000 churches or more, even, maybe, I don't know. But this whole vision is not necessarily just Pastor Wayman's. It's a vision that it's come through the church world, and starting a church is not something unique to Pastor Wayman Mitchell. Just my 2 cents there. Thank you. So yeah, I hope you understand my background, my story, and how I see things. Thank you.